Good evening friends, welcome to Manu Law classes. Welcome to Fortnight Current Affairs class. I am Gautam Kumar Dikshit. Let's start with the topic. One of the important topic which was covered and which was recent in news was Gandhi Peace Prize. So the Gandhi Peace Prize, the 2020 awardee is former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. He is also known as Bangabandhu or Friend of Bangla. He is the first Prime Minister of Bangladesh and he is the first President of Bangladesh, and he is also the father of nation of Bangladesh. The 2019 awardee was late Qaboos bin Said Al Said. He was the former King of Oman who recently died in January 2020. He is known for revolutionizing the society and economy of Oman. He raised the standard of living, provided employment, and proclaimed the constitution in Kingdom of Oman. Now let's have a look at Gandhi Peace Prize. What is Gandhi Peace Prize? The award was instituted in 1995 by the Government of India. Here GOI means Government of India. The objective was to commemorate the 125th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was born on 2nd October 1869. So in 1995, 125th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi was celebrated by instituting this prize. Now, according to the principles of Gandhiji, the award is awarded to persons regardless of the person's nationality, race, creed, or sex. Now, this is very important that this award is not only awarded to Indians, it can be awarded to people who are non-Indians also. And the award carries the citation, plaque, and ₹1 crore. The selection committee of the Gandhi Peace Prize comprised of Prime Minister of India, the Chief Justice of India, the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha or the leader of the single largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha Speaker, and one eminent person from any field in India. This time it was the founder of Sulabh International who was on the selection committee. Let's move ahead. Now let's have some facts about Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, a prime minister on the 2-day visit to Bangladesh. He visited the mausoleum of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in a place called as Tungipura. With this, our prime minister Shri Narendra Modi has become the first head of government and first head of state who has visited Tungipura or the mausoleum of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he is also known as Bangabandhu. Bangabandhu means friend of Bangla people. He is also known as Jatir Janak. Here Janak or Pita means father. It means father of nation or the father of nation of Bangladesh. He was the first prime minister and first president of Bangladesh. He co-founded Awami League in 1949 with Shahid Suhrawardy. He was killed in 1975. The Bangladesh was liberated in 1971. First he became Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and after that in 1975 he became President. But in 1975 he was killed during a military coup. The present Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, is the daughter of Mujibur Rahman. Now coming to the most important topic from international arena, Hong Kong electoral reforms. So the National People's Congress of China has passed certain reforms related to Hong Kong. Let's see some of the reforms which has been passed by National People's Congress and how it's going to affect the autonomy of Hong Kong. So the National People's Congress, okay, it is the supreme decision making body of China. So the National People's Congress of China, it has approved the expansion of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has its own Legislative Council which is different from China. So the National People's Congress want to expand the members or want to add more members to the Legislative Council. So the new strength will be 90. Earlier it was 70, now it is 90. This extra 20 members in the Legislative Council of Hong Kong will be elected or will be nominated. They will be nominated from functional constituencies. Functional constituencies are those constituencies from where the people are not elected but people are nominated. Now here, if the people are not elected but nominated, so Hong Kong people, the subject of Hong Kong, the people of Hong Kong, they fear that the people who will be nominated from the functional constituencies, they will be pro-China. Then a new body has been established called as the Election Committee. It has been expanded. Earlier the membership was 1200. Now the membership will be increased to 1500, means 300 new members will be added. But these 300 new members will not be drawn from Hong Kong. They all will be the members of National People's Congress, which is the supreme decision making body of mainland China. This is the second reform. The third reform is a new qualification review committee is being set up by China for Hong Kong. What is the job of this qualification review committee? The job of this qualification review committee is to review the qualifications of candidates for election committee. Means here we did election committee, which has 1500 members, out of which 300 are coming from National People's Congress. Then the job of this qualification review committee is to review the candidature of those candidates who are applying to become part of election committee or who are applying to become the part of Legislative Council of Hong Kong, okay, or to become the chief executive of Hong Kong. So the candidature of all those candidates will be reviewed by qualification review committee. But qualification review committee also has one more power, that is called as power of veto. Power of veto means that they can reject the candidature or they can reject the application of any members if they find that that member is not suitable for the position of member of election committee or the Legislative Council member or the chief executive. So there are three major reforms which are brought by National People's Congress. The first is expansion of Legislative Council of Hong Kong. The second is expansion of Election Committee of Hong Kong. And the third is establishing new qualification review committee with the power of veto. So according to Hong Kong, these three major amendments brought out by China is detrimental to their autonomy. Now before we understand the relation, before we understand the issue that why people in Hong Kong, they are worried about these electoral reforms brought by China, we have to understand the relationship of Hong Kong with China. So the relationship of Hong Kong with China is administered under one country, two systems. There are two territories. One is Hong Kong and second is Macau. Hong Kong and Macau. So Hong Kong I am denoting by HK. Before 1997, Hong Kong was under British rule and Macau was under Portugal rule. Fine. In 1997, China passed a Hong Kong Basic Law, and in 1999 it passed Macau Basic Law and established Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and Macau Special Administrative Region, under which Hong Kong and Macau both have autonomy. So the autonomy which are given to these two territories including Macau are that since China is a communist economy, but Hong Kong and Macau, they can retain their capitalist economy. Then China has its own currency, but Hong Kong, it has a different currency which is known as Hong Kong dollar. Then the legislative and legal system of Hong Kong is different from China. So Hong Kong has its own legal and legislative system. This new system will work from up to 50 years since 1997. So up to 2047, this system is going to work where Hong Kong will have autonomy from mainland China. The language of China is Mandarin, but the language of Hong Kong is Cantonese and English. The only two departments where mainland China or People's Republic of China has control over Hong Kong is Foreign Affairs and Defense. Okay, so this autonomy, which is called as Hong Kong Basic Law or one country two systems, the new electoral reform passed by China is undermining the autonomy granted under one country two system to the Hong Kong, and hence people are protesting in Hong Kong. Then let's come to the new topic, Mizoram refugee crisis. So recently there has been a refugee crisis going on in the states bordering Myanmar, especially in Mizoram. So Mizoram, Nagaland, Manipur and Arunachal Pradesh are the 4 states of India who share border with Myanmar, and refugees from Chin province are entering the Mizoram. Okay, but here the Union Home Ministry, it has prohibited the bordering states of Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram and Nagaland from allowing the refugees to enter India. But the issue is that Mizoram, in spite of Home Affairs Directive, Mizoram has issued the Standard Operating Procedure or SOP to facilitate the entry of Myanmar refugees from Chin province, mainly on humanitarian grounds and ethnic ties, because Mizoram has ethnic ties with the Chin province. So it's like before independence of India or Myanmar, they shared a relationship. Now they view these people as their own people, hence they are providing help to the people who are coming from Chin. But the Union Home Ministry has different stand on the Mizoram refugee crisis, and this has brought Mizoram and Union Home Ministry on different standpoint of view. But in India, the state government does not have the power to grant the status of refugee. It is purely the prerogative of union government. In spite of that, Mizoram has issued standard operating procedures to its officer to deal with refugee and their resettlement and rehabilitation. Recently, Mizoram has also allowed the refugees to work under Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Now, is there any international convention or any international rule which mandates India to take care of refugee? There is, but India is not a signatory to that convention. That convention is called as United Nations Conventions on the Status of Refugees, passed in 1951, and its protocol. But India is not signatory to this convention. This convention was passed aftermath of World War II, because after World War II there was a lot of refugee crisis problem going on in Europe, especially related to Jewish people. Now, India-Myanmar border. So I have already discussed 4 states of India, they share border with Myanmar. They are Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram. The total length of the border is 1468 km. This 1468 km border is guarded by Assam Rifles, and Indian government has proposed to build a new battalion to guard the Indian-Myanmar border, that is called as Indo-Myanmar Border Force, that in future it will replace Assam Rifles from guarding the Indo-Myanmar border. This Indo-Myanmar Border Force will comprise of 25 battalions of Assam Rifles. These 25 battalions will be coming from Assam Rifles, and 4 battalions will be coming from Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force to guard the Indo-Myanmar border. Then between India and Myanmar, there is a concept of free movement regime. The concept of free movement regime is that tribes or people living on the both side of border, they can move into each other's territory for 16 km. Up to 16 km, a person from Mizoram can enter India, and a person from India can enter, a person from Myanmar can enter Mizoram or India, a person from India can enter Myanmar. This free movement up to 16 km is called as free movement regime. The only thing is that if anybody wants to move from Myanmar to India or vice versa, they have to take a special permit from the local authorities. Then coming to the 1951 Refugee Status Convention. Now see, what is the objective of this convention? That first of all, its formal name is the United Nations Convention on Status of Refugees and Stateless Persons. It defines that who are the refugees, then what will be the rights of refugee in foreign nation, and then what will be the responsibilities of nation who grant asylum to these refugees. Okay, because the states, they have to provide certain level of social and economic protection to the refugees who have come from the different country. And then the United Nations Office of Human Rights Commissioner, they issue travel documents to refugees for visa-free travel between different countries. Okay, this protocol was adopted in 1967. Now, 2 points are very important with this. That first is the United States is not party to the convention, but it is party to the protocol which was adopted in 1967, and India is neither a signatory to the convention nor protocol. Then there is a talk of doubly mutant coronavirus. It is a unique double mutant coronavirus right now only found in India. It was first detected in Nagpur in December 2020, and there is a report that 20% of the new infection in states like Maharashtra, Delhi, Punjab and Gujarat, they are associated with this new variant. Now, the unique double mutant coronavirus, double mutant means that the genetic makeup of the virus has gone under change, okay, and it has gone double change, not single change but double change. So see, it has two new strains. The first is E484Q, which is indigenous strain, and the second is L452R, which is found in California. Now, what is the danger of this mutation? The danger of this mutation or double mutation is that they reduce the efficacy of the vaccines. Suppose that if I get infected with this doubly mutant coronavirus variant, then if I take the vaccine through CoWIN app, the efficacy of that vaccine will get reduced. Okay, why it is reduced? Because the mutant virus will suppress the immune system of my body, okay, and it will be resistant to the antibodies produced by my body after taking the injection, okay, and then the efficacy of the vaccine will itself reduce. That's why it is a cause of concern. Then there is NASAR. What is NASAR? It is a joint collaboration of NASA and ISRO to make a synthetic aperture radar. Now, it is a satellite system which will be launched in lower Earth orbit, very near to the Earth's surface, up to 500 km. It will be the world's first twin radar satellite system in two bands, L band and S band. The L band will be developed by NASA, and S band will be developed by ISRO, and it will be launched in 2022 from Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota. Now, what is the significance of synthetic aperture radar or NASAR? First of all is to assess the soil moisture, for improving the productivity of agriculture. Then right now we have witnessed Uttarakhand flood, and it was reported through satellite only that it has caused due to breaking of glacier. So monitoring floods, then monitoring groundwater and ice caps. Okay, then estimating agricultural biomass means total crop productivity or total crop production. And if we have better information about floods, groundwater and ice cap, so definitely we can better prepare ourselves for disaster and climate change. So NASAR, it is mainly a observation system in low Earth orbit. Then coming to electoral bonds, this issue was also in news. So electoral bonds, what are they? They are the financial instruments they are the financial instruments to be used to donate funds to the political parties. Okay, now why the electoral bond was introduced in India? The electoral bond was introduced to reduce the menace of black money in political funding, to eliminate the problem of black money in political funding. So they were introduced with the financial bill 2017, and they got passed in 2018. Under this mechanism, only SBI has the power to issue the electoral bonds. The electoral bonds can be issued only in the multiples of 1000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees and 1 crore. They are valid for 15 days from the date of issue. It means that if the person buys the bond from SBI, he has to pay the money, and within 15 days the political party has to encash that money. Now the bonds are available for purchase, means this is for purchase. for the period of 10 days in each month of January, April, July and October. So if you must have read today's newspaper, from today itself the government has allowed the sale of electoral bond in poll bound area. Now per people, they can buy either individually or jointly, but it can be only brought through formal channels like bank drafts, check or digital payment, but the name of the buyer is kept anonymous. It means whosoever is buying the bond, that name is only known to the bank. That name can never be known by the public or by the political parties. Now, can any party by benefit from this electoral bond scheme? No. The eligibility is that first, that the political party should be registered with Election Commission of India. Second, they should have secured not less than 1% of vote polled in last elections, either general assembly election or either general election or state assembly election. Now, since the name of the buyer is anonymous, so there are certain concerns. The first is lack of transparency. That is the first concern, that who is giving how much money, that is never known. Then anonymity, and then electoral bonds remove the 7.5% cap on political donations. Earlier, the companies which were donating the fund to the political parties, they could donate only maximum up to 7.5% of their last 3-year profit. Now this cap has been removed. Because of all these things, Supreme Court recently observed that political parties could misuse the fund which is coming from the electoral bond, and then through this money they can bankroll or finance the violent protest or even terror. Then we are talking about the Ken-Betwa River Link. So Ken-Betwa River Link, it is the first project under the National Perspective Plan on interlinking of river. What is National Perspective Plan? The National Perspective Plan is all about interlinking the rivers of Himalaya to the rivers of plateau region, means peninsular rivers. Okay, so this is the concept called as interlinking of river. The objective under this is to transfer the surplus water to the deficit region. So we can solve two problems of India, drought and flood. So if we have surplus water, we can have flood, but if we have deficit water, we can have drought. So if we interlink the rivers, we can solve this both problem. Okay, so under this program, the Ken River is going to be connected with the Betwa River. Both the rivers, they originate in Madhya Pradesh and they are the tributaries of Yamuna. Now the benefits are that they are going to provide irrigation and drinking water facilities in drought-prone Bundelkhand region. Bundelkhand region is the 13th district region in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, and it is a drought-prone region. The rainfall is very less. Then we can generate the hydroelectricity by building the dam. A dam will be built at the Ken River, and from that a canal will be drawn. So it is Ken River, a dam will be built, a canal will be built, and it will be connected to Betwa River. So a dam will be built, so here we can generate hydroelectricity power. Okay, and we can definitely have a very good flood management by building the dam. Now what is the disadvantage of this? The only disadvantage is that while building this dam, the 7.6% of the Panna Tiger Reserve will be submerged. Okay, that is 5803 hectare. Panna Tiger Reserve is one of the 51 tiger reserves in India. Then UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka. So recently India has abstained from voting on a resolution 46L1 in United Nations Human Rights Council. Okay, now it is the 8th resolution on human rights abuses in Sri Lanka after the end of war against LTT in 2009. The LTT war ended in 2009. After that, in resolution S11, Sri Lanka promised that it will rehabilitate the Tamil people who are living in the northern region of Sri Lanka. But after that, Sri Lanka did not fulfill this promise. So there were resolutions passed by USA in 2012 and the resolution passed in 2013 called as Human Rights Council 22/1. These both resolutions condemned the action of Sri Lanka and they charged Sri Lankan government for the gross violations of human rights. Then in 2014 there was one more resolution which called that Sri Lanka should call for investigation in the human rights violation in Sri Lanka. India voted in the first resolution. For Sri Lanka, India voted in the second and third resolution. In 2014, India abstained from the voting, and again this is the recent resolution. It was recently passed to collect information and evidences for the human rights violation in Sri Lanka. Again, India abstained from voting. Now, what is 13th Amendment? In 1987, an agreement was signed between India and Sri Lanka to grant political devolution or political rights to Tamil people living in North Sri Lanka. Okay, what were the features? Creation of provincial councils, self-governance structure in 9 provinces, and then states will have rights over making laws on land, police, housing, agriculture, health and education. Okay, but till now this amendment has been passed, but the provinces, they have not been granted autonomy, and that's why we are seeing the resolutions in United Nations Human Rights Council. Then recently in 2015 there was 19th Amendment, which diluted the power of president in Sri Lanka, and the government of Sri Lanka is coming up with 20th Amendment to again give president a powerful role. Then we have Istanbul Convention. It is a European Convention or European Council Convention, the Council of Europe Convention on Prevention and Combating the Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. It is a legally binding, means whosoever signed the document, they have to adhere to the convention. What is the objective? To prevent domestic violence against women, protect the victims, means women, and prosecute the offenders. Why it was in news? On 20th March 2021, Turkey announced its withdrawal on 3 grounds. That Turkey assumes that it is threat to Turkey's social and family values, promotes homosexuality in Turkey, and rise in number of divorces. And then see, is Turkey alone in withdrawing? No. There are other countries in the process of withdrawal. They are Poland, Hungary, Slovakia and Bulgaria. In order that you should not get confused, there is one more declaration related to women called as Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action for the Empowerment of Women. It was adopted in 1995 at 4th World Conference on Women. Okay, the objectives are gender equality, to provide better opportunities, to address social, political, economic and cultural inequalities. Now coming to Suez blockage, it is the Suez Canal is 193 km long and 440 meter wide. It connects two important water bodies, Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. The northern terminal is called as Port Said, which is located on the Mediterranean side, and southern terminal at Port Taufik in Suez. The construction started in 1859, completed in 1869. Now why this Suez is important? Because 10% of the global maritime trade, it passes through Suez Canal. Okay, and it was nationalized in 1956 by the Egyptian president Gamal Abdel Nasser once the Egypt became independent from British power. But in 1967, following the 6-day war between Egypt and Israel, it was closed for 8 years and it was opened only in 1975. Why it is concern for India? Because India is a top importer of crude oil and products via the Suez Canal. Okay, every day India imports 5 lakh barrels which comes through Suez Canal, and then India is the 6th largest exporter from this region. Then there are various choke points or points which are important from trade point of view. Strait of Hormuz, it connects Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. Bab el Mandab, it connects Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Strait of Malacca, it is connecting Malay Peninsula and Sumatra Island. Panama, it is connecting Atlantic and Pacific. Gibraltar, connecting Atlantic with the Mediterranean. Then Bering Strait, connecting Pacific with the Arctic Ocean. Then 67th National Film Award was recently awarded for the movies released in 2019. See the best categories. Best Feature Film, Marakkar, Lion of the Arabian Sea. Best Direction, Bahattar Hure. Best Debut Film of a Director, Helen. Best Children's Film, Kasturi. Best Popular Film providing entertainment, wholesome entertainment, Maharishi. Best feature film on national integration, Taj Mahal. Best film on the other social issue, Anandi Gopal. These two awards are also known as Silver Lotus. Silver Lotus. And this top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are also known as Golden Lotus Award. They are also known as Golden Lotus Award. Okay. Then best film on environmental conservation, Water Burial. Best actor, Manoj Bajpayee for Bhosle, Dhanush for Asuran. Best actress, Kangana Ranaut for two films, Manikarnika and Panga. Supporting actor, Vijay Sethupathi for Super Deluxe. Supporting actress, Pallavi Joshi for Tashkent. Best non-feature film, An Engineered Dream. Then best director in non-feature film. In non-feature film is Sudhanshu Saria for Knock 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 Knock. Then there are certain facts. Premas Biotech is a Gurgaon-based company which has entered into collaboration with an Israeli pharmaceutical company called as Oramed Pharmaceuticals. Why it is important? Because they are going to manufacture oral vaccine for COVID-19 which can be taken as a pill. Then 11th century Delhi ruler Anangpal II, who belonged to Tomar dynasty, he is credited with establishing Delhi in 11th century, and he named the city as Dilhika, and he had built several monuments which are Lal Kot Fort and Anangtal Boli. Recently government has announced to honor him and to make a museum in his name. Then during the Assam election, General Lachit Borphukan, he became prominent. His name was coming in the newspaper. He is important for the victory of Ahom kingdom in the battle of Sarai Ghat in 1671 with Mughals. The battle, it was a naval battle which happened in Brahmaputra in Sarai Ghat, and Ahom were victorious against Mughals. Then Pong Dam Lake Wildlife Sanctuary is in the news. It is located in Himachal Pradesh, declared as Ramsar site. So it is a very important wetland. It was in news because of death of 27 migratory birds recently and 5,000 migratory birds in January. Then Rajinikanth has recently been awarded 67 Dada Saheb Phalke Award by Directorate of Film Festivals, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Now what is Dada Saheb Phalke Award? It is India's highest award to honor outstanding contribution to the growth and development of Indian cinema. The first winner of this was Devika Rani in 1969 and the latest winner is Rajinikanth. Then Bahrain Grand Prix, it is the Formula 1 racing championship race sponsored by Gulf Air. It was held in Bahrain and it is being held since 2004. Now the 2020 Formula 1 race winner was Lewis Hamilton. He has won Formula 1 World Champion for the 7 times. Thank you everyone.